Look at a 19-year-old United States Army infantryman standing in a dusty outpost in Syria or Eastern Europe. To the casual observer, he looks like a young man in camouflage. He is tired, he is likely hungry, he is covered in dust. But to the Department of Defense, he is not just a man. He is a walking, breathing investment portfolio. He is a multi-million-dollar asset. The helmet on his head costs more than your first car. The night vision goggles flipping down over his eyes cost as much as a university education. The training that allows him to pull the trigger without hesitation costs more than a house. We often hear the phrase freedom is not free. It is a cliché, but in the world of military logistics, it is a literal mathematical fact. The United States spends nearly $1 trillion a year on defense, but where does that money actually go? It does not just vanish into the ether. It is injected directly into the nervous systems, the muscles, and the minds of young Americans. This video is an audit of the human weapons system. We are going to calculate the true cost of courage. We are going to find out how much cash it takes to build a killer. The ledger opens before the recruit even raises their right hand. The cost of acquisition is the first shock. In a volunteer force, you cannot draft labor, you must buy it. The Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines are competing against Amazon, Google, and the local trade union for the same pool of eligible youth. And that pool is shrinking. Obesity, drug use, and criminal records disqualify 77% of American youth from service. This scarcity drives up the price. The military spends roughly $1 billion annually just on advertising. That Super Bowl commercial, that targeted Instagram ad, that esports sponsorship, that is the cost of getting a teenager to simply consider the idea of service. Once a prospect walks into the recruiting station, the checkbook opens wider. Enlistment bonuses can reach $50,000 for high-demand jobs. A kid fresh out of high school can sign a paper and make more money in a day than his parents make in a year. But this is not charity. This is a down payment on his body and soul for the next 4 years. When you factor in the recruiter's salaries, the storefront rents, the background checks, and the medical screenings, the Pentagon spends approximately $40,000 just to get one raw, untrained civilian onto the bus to boot camp. He hasn't done a single push-up yet, and he is already a $40,000 liability. Then the bus arrives at basic training. Now the industrial spending begins. The logistics of feeding, clothing, and housing 150,000 recruits a year is a supply chain miracle. Let's talk about the food, the MRE or meal ready to eat. It is a vacuum-sealed, calorie-dense brick of fuel. It costs the government about $15 per pack. A soldier eats 3 times a day in the field. That is $45 a day per soldier just to keep the biological engine running. Multiply that by thousands of trainees every single day. The numbers spiral into the millions within a week. And that is just calories. The clothing issue, or the sea bag, is the next line item. 4 sets of uniforms, boots that cost $200 a pair, cold weather gear, physical training kits, dress blues. The initial issue of clothing for a single Marine costs over $3,000, but the true expense is not the fabric, it is the ammunition. We do not send soldiers to war to miss, we send them to hit. And accuracy is a product of repetition. During the 10 weeks of basic combat training, a recruit will fire thousands of rounds of ammunition. A single 5.56mm round costs roughly 50 cents. That sounds cheap, but listen to the sound of a live-fire range. That is the sound of thousands of dollars evaporating every minute. A machine gunner training with the M240 Bravo will fire $10 worth of lead in a 3-second burst. In a single training evolution, a platoon can expend $50,000 in ammunition. They are shooting at paper targets. They are shooting at dirt. To the taxpayer, this looks like waste. To the military, this is the price of muscle memory. Every missed shot on the range is a potential death in combat, so they keep firing. They fire until the act of reloading is as subconscious as breathing. The government burns money in the form of gunpowder so that when the enemy appears, the investment pays off with a single fatal shot. But basic training is the bargain bin. The costs explode when we move to advanced individual training. This is where the soldier learns their actual job. A medic's training takes 16 weeks. An intelligence analyst's training can take a year. But the crown jewel of expense, the absolute apex of human capital investment, is the pilot. Let's look at a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force. The selection process alone is a multi-million-dollar filter. Candidates are put through centrifuges that spin them until they weigh 9 times their own body weight. If they pass out, they fail. If they vomit, they fail. The machine costs millions to operate. The medical staff monitoring them costs thousands per hour. And that is just to see if they can physically sit in the chair. Once they start flying, the meter runs at a rate that is hard to comprehend. An F-35 Lightning II costs $44,000 for every single hour it is in the air. That covers fuel, maintenance, and parts. A student pilot needs hundreds of hours to become qualified. Do the math. By the time a fighter pilot walks to his jet for his first combat mission, the United States government has spent between $5 and $10 million on his training. He is not just a man anymore. He is a flying corporation. The helmet he wears, custom-fitted to his skull with a heads-up display that projects radar data directly onto his retina, costs $400,000. You could buy a 4-bedroom home in the Midwest for the price of the hat he wears to work. Why spend $10 million on one human being? Because the jet he is flying costs $100 million. You do not hand the keys to a Lamborghini to a teenager with a learner's permit. The training is the insurance policy for the hardware. But there is a darker side to this economic equation. It is the cost of attrition, the cost of the ones who quit. Nowhere is this more visible or more expensive than in the selection courses for special operations. The Navy SEALs, the Army Green Berets, the Air Force Pararescue. These courses are designed to fail people. The attrition rate at basic underwater demolition SEAL training hovers around 80%. Think about the economics of that. The Navy recruits a sailor, they pay his bonus. They train him at boot camp, they feed him, they house him, they send him to prep school, they fly him to Coronado, California, they issue him gear. And then on day 3 of Hell Week, after being cold, wet, and awake for 60 hours, he rings the bell, he quits, he is out. From a business perspective, this is a disaster. The Navy has poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into this candidate, and the return on investment is zero. He will not become a SEAL. He will go chip paint on a destroyer. Millions of dollars are washed out to sea with every class that graduates, but the military views this differently. They view the waste as necessary. The cost of producing a substandard SEAL is far higher than the cash lost on a quitter. If a weak operator makes it onto a team, he endangers the mission. A failed mission can have strategic consequences that cost billions or cost lives that cannot be replaced. So the military happily burns money in the furnace of selection to ensure that the only product that emerges is pure gold. Let's talk about the gear that survives the cut. The modern infantryman is a walking technology platform. 30 years ago, a soldier carried a rifle, a canteen, and a helmet. Today, the kit is science fiction. The body armor is ceramic composite capable of stopping a high-velocity rifle round to the chest. Cost $3,000. The radio on his chest is a secure encrypted satellite uplink that allows him to talk to aircraft in orbit. Cost $15,000. The laser designator he uses to paint targets for airstrikes. Cost $30,000. Even the night is expensive. The new PSQ-20B enhanced night vision goggles fuse thermal imaging with light intensification. They allow a soldier to see body heat through smoke, through fog, through total darkness. They cost nearly $20,000 per unit. A single squad of 9 men walking through the woods at night is carrying $250,000 of optical technology on their faces. This is why the United States owns the night. We do not just have better eyes, we have more expensive eyes. We buy the ability to see the enemy before he sees us. Then there is the training environment itself. The days of shooting at static paper targets are ending. The Army now uses synthetic training environments. Giant virtual reality simulators where soldiers can fight inside a digital replica of the city they are about to deploy to. They use simunition rounds, paint bullets that hurt when they hit, forcing soldiers to react to pain. They build entire fake towns like the Combined Arms Collective Training Facilities. These are Hollywood-grade sets with actors, pyrotechnics, and fake blood. They blow up buses. They simulate chemical attacks. The cost to run one of these exercises for a brigade is in the tens of millions. But the logic remains. It is cheaper to learn a lesson here in a fake town than to learn it in a real city where the mistake costs a flag-draped coffin. Consider the Javelin missile system. It is a shoulder-fired anti-tank weapon. It is a fire-and-forget system. The soldier locks onto a tank, pulls the trigger, and the missile climbs into the sky to strike the tank from above where the armor is thinnest. It is a terrifying weapon. It is also an economic anomaly. Each missile costs roughly $175,000. In training, soldiers must fire these. Imagine that. A 20-year-old sergeant kneels in the dirt. He aims, he fires. Whoosh, boom, in 3 seconds he has just blown up the equivalent of a brand new Ferrari. And he does it just to see what it feels like. He does it so that when a Russian or Chinese tank is actually cresting the ridge, he doesn't flinch. The military burns Ferraris in the desert so that soldiers don't miss when it counts. But the most staggering cost is not the training or the gear or the ammo. It is the lifetime commitment. When a human being signs that contract, the government accepts liability for the chassis. If a soldier breaks his back jumping out of a helicopter, the government pays. If he develops hearing loss from the artillery, the government pays. If he comes home with post-traumatic stress disorder and needs therapy for 40 years, the government pays. The Department of Veterans Affairs has a budget of over $300 billion a year. That is the back-end cost of war. It is the mortgage payment on the training we did 20 years ago. We push human bodies to the absolute limit of their endurance. We make them ruck march with 100 pounds of gear until their knees grind to dust. We expose them to blast waves that rattle their brains. We equip them, train them, and break them. And then we spend billions trying to put them back together. This is the hidden line item. The cost of a soldier is not just the 4 years he serves. It is the 50 years he lives after he takes off the uniform. It is the knee replacements, the insulin, the counseling. When you look at the defense budget, do not just see tanks and planes. See the millions of veterans whose health care is part of the deal. So let's tally the receipt. To take a civilian, recruit him, train him, equip him with state-of-the-art technology, feed him, house him, and prepare him for combat, the initial investment is easily in the 6 figures. For a special operator or a pilot, it is in the millions. For a unit, it is in the billions. Critics look at these numbers and see bloat. They see a military-industrial complex out of control. And perhaps there is truth to that. $700 for a toilet seat is a scandal, but ask the soldier in the trench. Ask the ranger who is outnumbered in a firefight. When he calls for air support and a $100 million jet drops a $50,000 smart bomb within 10 meters of his position to save his life, he does not care about the taxpayer. He cares about the capability. The United States military approach to war is based on a simple, expensive philosophy. Overmatch, we never want a fair fight. A fair fight is a gamble. We want an unfair fight. We want to have better optics, better armor, better communications, and better training than anyone else on Earth. We want to buy victory before the first shot is fired. We spend this money to buy margin, the margin of error. If a soldier is tired, his expensive scope helps him see. If he is slow, his expensive body armor keeps him alive. If he is pinned down, his expensive radio brings help. We wrap our young men and women in a cocoon of cash and technology to try and cheat death. It doesn't always work. Bullets are cheap and they don't care how much your night vision cost. An IED made of fertilizer and a cell phone costs $50 and it can destroy $1 million vehicle. War is the most unpredictable economic sector on Earth, but the spending continues. The next time you see footage of a U.S. military exercise, look past the explosions. Look at the logistics. Look at the synchronized movements. Look at the sheer scale of the operation. You are watching the GDP of a small nation being expended in real time. You are watching the most expensive training program in human history. The machine never stops. Right now, recruiters are signing bonuses. Factories are sealing MRE packages. Pilots are burning jet fuel. The ledger is open. The price is high. But as long as the world remains dangerous, the check will be paid. Because the only thing more expensive than training a soldier is sending an untrained one to die. The only thing more expensive than a strong military is losing a war. This analysis has only scratched the surface of the military economy. We haven't even touched on the black budget, the classified programs, or the cost of maintaining nuclear silos. If you want to see a breakdown of how much it costs to deploy a carrier strike group or the economics of a drone war, hit that subscribe button. The numbers get even bigger from here. Leave a comment on what piece of military tech you think is worth the money and what is a waste. We are tracking the data. Join us for the next briefing.